Okay, so good afternoon and thanks for joining us here on the library's YouTube page. Our program is going to start in just a minute. We just need to take a moment to make sure all of our tech is working properly. So we'll just going to start in a couple seconds here. Okay, we have confirmation that we are good to go. So again, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here. My name is John Beekman. I work in the library's local history department, the New Jersey room. Before we begin, I just want to take a minute to talk about the library. Just want to look at the library's homepage. How can I do that? Okay, sorry for that delay. So again, I just want to take a look at the library's homepage at jclibrary.org. As you can see, as we've had to practice social distancing, leaving our library buildings inaccessible, we've really been working to expand our digital services. I'd like to encourage you to take a look at the site there. You'll notice we do have a chat box on the page where you can ask us questions. It's a great way to reach out and talk to the library. You can see a lot of our services here on the first page, events, services. Our digital collections here on this link will take you to all of our databases. And I'd like to also draw your attention to these landing pages that we've set up to really highlight some of the services that we've been adding and expanding. I particularly like to draw your attention to this New Jersey room site, where we have a program to collect stories about life during the era of COVID-19. So I'd really encourage all Hudson County residents to take a look at that and consider sharing their experiences during this time. You can also find us on Instagram, JC Library NJ, and of course, plenty of events on our library's Facebook page, JCFPLNJ. So, and of course, you all know we are here on YouTube where we are today, and every Thursday, Jeffrey Trichek, our library director, gives live updates on the library, and that's really a best source for up-to-date information about everything that's going on with our library as we look towards slowly reopening in a safe manner. So, without further ado, I'm going to switch off my screen and introduce our speaker. So we're very grateful that Joe is here today. And Joseph Bilby, who received his BA and MA degrees in history from Seton Hall, served as a lieutenant in the 1st Infantry Division in Vietnam, 1966 to 67. He's the assistant curator of the New Jersey National Guard and Militia Museum in Seagirt, and he's a columnist for Civil War News and New Jersey Sportsman News, a freelance writer, historian, and historical consultant. The author, editor, or co-author of over 400 articles and 21 books on New Jersey, the Civil War, and firearms history. His most recent works include submarine warfare among the New Jersey shore, New Jersey military history, and New Jersey Noir, bizarre stories from the Garden State from 1921 to 1952. And his latest book, The Rise and Fall of the KKK in New Jersey, co-authored with Harry Ziegler, was published by the History Press in 2019, and he's here to talk about that with us today. Joe's received the Jane Clayton Award for contributions to Monmouth County history, an award of merit from the New Jersey Historical Commission for his contributions to the state's military history, and the New Jersey Meritorious Service Medals from the state's Division of Military and Veterans Affairs. And in November of 2018, he was awarded the Richard H. Hughes Prize by the New Jersey Historical Commission for his lifelong contributions to New Jersey history. And Joe posts daily two-day in New Jersey history posts on his Facebook page, which are always very interesting. And he has personally been a great resource to me for all questions in New Jersey, especially but not limited to military history. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that he's taken the time to be with us here today. And with that, I will turn it over to Joe. How you doing, Joe?
Hi. Okay. All right, can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes.
me? Okay. The book is The Rise and Fall of the Ku Klux Klan in New Jersey. And a lot of people were unaware that there was a significant Ku Klux Klan in New Jersey. The original Ku Klux Klan was founded to try to restore the status quo before the Civil War without actual legal slavery down in Tennessee. And President Grant called in the 7th Cavalry, and they eventually got rid of the Klan. Now, the Klan sort of hovered, even though it didn't really exist, until this movie, popular culture, The Birth of a Nation, back in 1918, and it went on for years at a number of different places. And the theme of the movie was that somehow the Civil War had resulted in unhappy things for Southern white people, especially Southern women. And they were being pillaged by former slaves that are run by crooked guys from the North, carpetbaggers. So they made this into a movie, and the heroes of the movie are the Ku Klux Klan, who, unlike in the real story, restore order, and the Birth of a Nation becomes the national narrative in many ways of the so-called lost cause, where slavery as a cause of the Civil War is sort of edited out, and lots of statues go up during this period as well. So, and here's an image from the movie, which shows this Union soldier leering at this pure Southern womanhood, who's actually Lillian Gish, the actress.
Joe,
Yeah.
I just need to stop you real quick. We are not seeing your slides. Are you sharing your slides?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Unless you want to show from that end.
Hold on a second. We may have just some technical issues.
Okay.
Okay, I apologize. I think that was my fault. If you can
All right.
try and share your screen again.
Okay.
Maybe just try and start that over again. I'm very sorry.
Let's see. I don't know how to go back on this. Well, the first two pages were simply illustrations of the book cover, and then the film Birth of a Nation. So the third one we're up to is William Joseph Simmons, and who's described as I note here, a man constantly on the make. He was a guy whose career was involved with selling fraternal memberships. Now, there were numerous fraternal organizations all over America at this time, and they provided, in the days before Social Security and affordable insurance for the average person, they afforded a little bit of Social Security, sort of. You know, if you died, they'd give your wife $50. So all of these associations, one was the International Order of Red Men, which only let white men in, interesting. But so Simmons used to sell these memberships, and he said to himself when he saw the movie, Birth of a Nation, hey, I can start one myself. and it'll have all the stuff that they like, you know, goofy costumes and brotherhood and, you know, America first. So that's what he did. But he didn't really go that far with it. There were a few hundred members down around Atlanta, Georgia, but then he hooked up with these two people here, Edward Young Clark and Mary Elizabeth Tyler, who are the Southern Publicity Association, very early PR firm. And they made the Klan National Organization. They made it like a pyramid scheme. You would become a Kliegel, which is a recruiter. You go to another state, you charge the guy $10 to join the organization, you take two, and then it goes on up the line. So they, in turn, eventually pushed out Mr. Simmons and replaced him with another guy. So this is New Jersey Governor Edward Edwards. And he was, the Klan was welcome in New Jersey because it was pro-prohibition, at least in name. And he was against prohibition. But this guy is the new imperial wizard, Hiram Wesley Evans. He was a Texas dentist. And this is a picture of him in Washington at a march. And he cooperated with those two PR people, and then he eventually got rid of them. But by that time, the Klan was growing to become a national organization. And that meant that they went into the North as well. As a matter of fact, this is the statue of George Washington. In 1923, some people identifying themselves as Klansmen laid a wreath, and the public works director saw it and had it immediately removed. The Klan was never very popular here with elected officials of either party, or individuals. Now, one of the Klan's big things is it broadened its opposition. Not only was it for keeping Black people in their places, but it was also for doing the same for immigrants, Catholics, and Jews. And so by expanding the number of supposed enemies, you expand your membership. And people who are afraid of all the immigrants coming into this country, and then you have the immigration legislation in the 1920s that seriously limits immigration, especially from Southern and Eastern Europe, which is where most of the immigrants between 1890 and 1920 came from. So you've got a problem with them. And then you look at 80% of the bootleggers in the 1920s were either foreign-born or the children of foreign-born immigrants. Now, as Bishop Alma White was a woman from Kentucky, and she went out west. She was a teacher. She became a Methodist, married a Methodist minister. They separated. She came east, and she opened a religious colony up in Somerset County, and she wrote a lot of articles for a magazine she published on a monthly basis, and she was a very fierce feminist, as I note, but only regarding white Protestant women. To her, to Alma, she had a traveling minister make her a bishop, and so she was quite vociferous in her. So she was welcoming the Klan to New Jersey. And here's her monthly magazine, the Good Citizen. As you can see, here's a Klansman ringing the Liberty Bell with George Washington in the background, American flag, and he's stepping on the head of a Catholic bishop. Now, the Klan comes to New Jersey in the early 1920s. They have not heard of it. A lot of the newspapers said, well, we've heard some words about this organization. We really don't know anything about it. Well, in Jersey City in 1923, the Jersey Journal said, oh, the Klan is not extensive here. Never heard of it out in the open. And most of the other papers are the same. But so they started to do publicity. And they were real great at publicity. Overly great at publicity. These are people being initiated. Now they would invite reporters to come to these meetings where they were initiating Klansmen, and they would have the reporters, they would do it down in like a valley and have the reporters up on a hill. So they couldn't really get down and talk to people, but they could watch and take photographs. So this is one, and we think it's one from 1922, and Arthur Bell is the guy who was the Kliegel and was on his way to becoming the New Jersey Grand Dragon. Now, and there was they made some mistakes. They went up to Perth Amboy to try to recruit. The city was loaded with immigrants. And so there was a riot. And this is the downtown Perth Amboy area where the riot was. 5,000 people showed up against 200 Klansmen who came up from Monmouth County. Monmouth and Ocean were their strong points. And they barely got out with their lives. A policeman saw a guy pushing a Klansman down a sewer, and he said, no, you can't do that. That's murder. The guy said, okay, and he let him up, and they got him out of town in a police car. So that was quite an event, and it should have showed them that, well, we're not welcome here. But in Monmouth and Ocean County, they were in good stead. And here's a Klan wedding on the beach at Point Pleasant. And here we have ladies of the invisible empire, known as the Lotties, and later they called them the Camellia. They were the female auxiliary of the Klan. They couldn't be real Klansmen because you got to be a man to be a Klansman. They tried in Atlantic City to hold a parade, and you see here Mayor Edward Bader of Atlantic City with Margaret Gorman, the first Miss America. And when he found out about it, he was a Catholic actually, and he said, it says, the parading of assembly of persons disguising their identity and the burning of fiery crosses in the city is forbidden. They found one cross on the beach that was burning, and a black policeman put it out while another policeman stood by with his gun drawn. Now, this is Asbury Park Mayor Clarence Hetrick. Hetrick is a guy who he saw himself as being in competition with Nucky Johnson at Atlantic City, and he wanted to make Asbury a modern place. And it had roots in the same place Ocean Grove did, so the liquor was prohibited, et cetera, et cetera. And so he wanted to modernize the city. But in 1911, there was a lynching attempt on a black man who they accused of assaulting and murdering a little girl. And he was the sheriff at this time, Hetrick. And he came into town and he got the guy out of jail and brought him out to freehold. And then he hired some private detectives. And it turns out, of course, that they found the guy who was the murderer, who was a German, by the way. And so the black population in Asbury then, they knew who they were voting for because he had helped them out. And so also people who wanted to modernize the city. So Hetrick, he had a meeting of all the businesses in town, and then they went off to a speakeasy over across the river. And he apparently there was word leaked out that ladies from New York had come down in scant apparel, and there was a guy who was a Klansman who was in the group, was a spy, and he came out and he had this release, and every minister in town was calling for Hetrick to be imprisoned, and it was brought out to freehold to the county, and they refused to act on it in the end. And he said, his famous quote is, the story that a naked woman sat on my lap is a damnable lie. And this is the place where it all took place. And that's the Deal Inn. And there's the interior of the Deal Inn back in the day. Now, the biggest event of it's mostly known by people even who don't know much about the Klan in New Jersey, is the Tri-State Conclave. And that was held at Elkwood Park, which is where the racetrack is today in West Long Branch. And the result was a march down Broadway and Long Branch. Now, the Klan always lied about the number of people at any event. They said there'd be 80,000 people visiting their conclave, and now the estimates are around 25,000 or so. Then they said that the parade down Broadway would be 20,000 people, and the police estimated at 3,000 and change. Now, this is the Tri-State Conclave too, so you had a lot of out-of-state license plates. Yeah, Pennsylvania. They always brought in people from other states to make it look like they were a bigger organization than they ever were. And here's the march down Broadway and Long Branch. So people looked at them, and that was about it. Then came the scandals. This guy, George Lawson, he was an interesting person in that he was a guy who was organizing baseball leagues prior to World War I. He's born in England, and he actually went back to England, and he joined the British Army, and then he was discharged for mental problems later on. He goes back to the States, back to world baseball, and he marries 3 different women, but I don't think he ever gets divorced, many of them. But now he's a minister, a self-ordained minister. So he comes to New Brunswick, and he advertises in the paper that he wants a prayer bride, and he marries another woman. And they go down to the Bayshore. And the Bayshore is a big rum running area, of course. And he's appointed a Klan minister. Now, he really shouldn't have been, because he wasn't born in this country. But at any rate, later on, he breaks with the Klan, and he poses with the Bible, a revolver, and a Klan hood. Says he's running for Congress with the motto, "Can the Klan." So, and then we have out in Indiana, Steve Stevenson. And he's the head of the Klan, not only in Indiana, but in neighboring states as well. And they really like him down in Atlanta because he really recruits a lot. He was a guy who was smart enough to affiliate the Klan with the Horse Thief Chasing Association, which wasn't chasing too many horse thieves back in the 20s, but they had deputy powers. So he absorbs them into the Klan, and then they stop individual vehicles and search them for booze. They find a lot, but none of it is ever accounted for. So, but at any rate, Steve also has a problem with women, and he's dating a woman who works for the state of Alabama, or not Alabama, I mean Indiana, and he takes her in his private railroad train, and he assaults her and drugs her, and then she subsequently dies, and he's charged with murder. And then he reveals that the entire government of Indiana is in cahoots with the Klan, or if not, the governor's probably a member. So he goes away to jail, but that's a big scandal that hurts the Klan. And then the last one is another local scandal, and that's in New Jersey. Out in Trenton, Carl Ziegler is a minister, and he's an ideal Klansman. He's an all-American boy, served in the Army in World War I. He's a minister. He's a prohibitionist on paper anyway. And he becomes the chief cleagle out there. And what he does was he ends up running away with Margaret Peggy Roberts, an next-door neighbor who was like 16 years old, and $1,000 in Klan money, and they get caught in Texas. So eventually they're brought back to New Jersey. They're going to try them on, his parents pay back the Klan, but that scandal, again, doesn't help the Klan in New Jersey. So they try a promotional 1925 Klan Mother's Day rally in Ocean Grove. And the Grand Dragon and his wife are, they're basically, they used to be vaudevillians, and now they're bringing that talent to the Klan. Let's have music and song, and here's another, they have a charity circus. The headquarters for the state Klan was in Long Branch, West Long Branch, but then they couldn't pay the mortgage, got kicked out, and they ended up in with the Monmouth Pleasure Club in Wall Township. And that is now where there's a museum there. It was Camp Evans after the Klan left during World War II. But originally, it was the Marconi wireless station. And then after Marconi abandons it, it becomes the Klan headquarters in New Jersey. And they have a circus there, and they try to, everybody's welcome. Everybody. But said if you're a Klans person, don't wear your hood. Red Bank Klan chapters, they put in to be in a parade on Memorial Day with a patriotic float. Many of the other people in Red Bank do not like this, and so they end up with about 20 different organizations and to downplay the Klan's role. There's a big one in Washington in 1925 and 26. But what a lot of people didn't note was in 26 they had a lot, maybe 40,000 people in 25, and maybe half that many in 26. So it's starting in the mid-20s. It's starting to slow down. Here's Miss 100% America as opposed to Miss America at the Klan headquarters at the Monmouth Pleasure Club. Now, the Monmouth Pleasure Club is purchased and it's used as a Klan headquarters, but the actual owners of the property are individual Klansmen from Point Pleasant and a few from Asbury Park. And to them, it is a business expenditure as well, because they sell lots of this large area of land, and they claim they own it, but then the National Klan claims they own it. And Arthur Bell, the Kentucky Grand Dragon, or the New Jersey Grand Dragon, he stands with the National Klan. And there's a big feud and a court case that goes all the way up to the appeals court below the Supreme Court, and the Klan is thrown out of the Monmouth Pleasure Club. They then excommunicate all the Klansmen. As I said before, politicians of either party were not really welcome by the Klan, because in New Jersey in 1920, 20% of the population were born in another country, and that doesn't include their children. So it's only certain areas where the Klan is going to be, not in the urban areas. Republican Assemblyman Basil Bruno of Long Branch, and here's a guy whose parents were Italian immigrants. Well, he changes his religion from Catholicism to Methodism, and he was a smart guy. He had a place down on the pharmacy in town and another one down on the boardwalk for the summer. And he ran for county sheriff in the late 20s and was decisively beaten, even though he had won an assemblyman's job and introduced the Klan's Bibles in Schools legislation prior to that. They said they wanted separation of church and state, but they wanted Bibles in schools, which is kind of interesting. Now, as the Klan really starts to slope down, and the big event of 1927 was the Easter Sunday sunrise service in Somerset County. And they are marching to the venue there. Again, reporters say we see an awful lot of out-of-state license plates. And that was the same old deal. But the actual, the Grand Wizard came to that particular thing. This is now, they're beginning to be ridiculed in the newspapers. In 1928, they say what to do when you're out of the Klan with your hood, you nice cozy effect to the fireplace to keep off mosquitoes. So there's a definite lack of reverence. United States Senator Hamilton Kane, who's grandfather of our Governor Kane. When 1928, Bell, the Grand Dragon, said he wants to have all the Republican candidates come to Newark to the hotel that he's at, and he's going to have them examined for their Americanism. So Kane's answer was, I'm not a member of the Ku Klux Klan, never had anything to do with it. Why should I attend? No one showed up, by the way. Now this guy, probably a Klansman himself. In 1928, Al Smith's running for governor. So Al Smith, of course, is a Catholic, which is a no-no to the Klan, and he's also from New York. He has that New York accent, and he likes a cocktail now and then. So Cotton Tom Heflin, who's a senator from Alabama, is hired by the Jersey Klan, apparently, although they try to hide it, to come up and give anti-Al Smith talks. Now, this guy, when he was a congressman, before he became a senator, he was campaigning for segregating public transit in Washington, and he had an argument with a black guy on the subway and shot him. He didn't pay the guy's medical bill, so they dropped the charges. But at any rate, when he was in Asbury Park, he gave a talk in Neptune, and he stayed in a hotel in Asbury Park. And he's a rather hefty individual, and he broke a bed board, and he calls the office downstairs to have someone come up and repair his bed. And he said, "I want their names and their descriptions before you come up, because Catholic agents are out to kill me." Well, not really, but and here's Al Smith down at Seagirt, which was the New Jersey governor's venue for the summer. I have Governor Harry Moore, who's from Jersey City. Catherine Smith, Governor Al Smith, and Jenny Moore was Moore's wife in 1928. And they held a big rally down at Seagirt. Of course, Frank Hay had a lot to do with it. He got the people down there. It was a big, they say there ran about 80,000 people. And the trains were coming into Seagirt every 12 minutes. They later held an FDR rally down there. Meanwhile, up in Ocean Grove, Al Smith was preaching about don't vote for Al Smith, because he's a Catholic and he's an anti-prohibitionist, and God knows what else. Now, one interesting thing is, during the whole course of this, members of the New Jersey black population who were soldiers in World War I approach, and are politically active, approach the legislature, and they said, "We would like to have a National Guard unit." The whole army is segregated this time, so it's going to be a black unit. Well, we have to apply to the federal government for a National Guard unit, and they deny it, because a lot of Southern senators, there are a few National Guard units of African Americans, but not many. They want to keep it that way. So what the New Jersey legislature does is make them a militia unit. Eventually, when World War II starts, the federal government says, "Oh, yeah, you want to come to Guard? Yeah, we'll like you there." But they were the first separate battalion, and they were on the beach during the Morro Castle disaster. They were good marksmen and good soldiers, and the plan never mentions them. So now we see we're up. The Klan sort of collapses in 28 after all those scandals, and then Mr. Bell, who's the Grand Dragon, well, he suddenly leaves. Why has he left? We don't know. Well, of course, they got kicked out of Wall Township headquarters. So that's one reason. But about 3 months later, Bell's wife divorces him from Ohio, and 2 weeks later, he marries his secretary. So no doubt something was going on. So he's out of the Klan. And in the 1930s, the Klan is steadily decreasing. And there's a group called the White Band that Simmons comes back to establish. And being a white band, you don't have to buy a hood and a sheet from Atlanta. But it never really takes off. And then suddenly in 1939, he's back in the Klan again. And he's conducting, and here, this is in Jersey City, the most unlikely place, I think, to hold any kind of a Klan. In 1925, they actually petitioned to hold a rally and said there'd be 30,000 people there. Frank Hay took note of that, and they never got there. In 1927, actually, Imperial Wizard Herm Evans actually held a rally in the Jersey City Armory. Now, most of the people that were in there weren't from Jersey City, and people cut the cables for the radio version of the rally, and People weren't too happy with it. Now Bell is back. No, we don't say why he's back, but he's back. And Jersey City becomes sort of a focal point for some strange reason. And this guy is probably the reason. Alton Milford Young was a Baptist minister from Belmar, and he became Bell's right-hand man. He was his chaplain and chief Clud, as they call him. And for some reason, he moves to Jersey City. And he gets in a white band with Bell, and then that bottoms out. And then what happens is that he actually petitions to hold another rally in 1939, and no, of course that's not going to happen. But there's an interesting footnote, which we'll get to in a while. Probably the last thing that they do is Arthur Bell, he says, now where can I find a similar organization that has a lot of people that we might appeal to? Ah, yes, the Camp Nordland Bund, the Klan, the Bund, the Klan, the Bund, same thing, right? White guys. And so he goes up there and has a meeting with August Klaproth. Meanwhile, 4,000 people gather outside the venue, and they're chanting and yelling and cursing and everything else. This is in August 1940, and they all get in trouble for this because a congressional committee comes up from Washington and sits in Newark and interviews all these people. And they say to Bell, you think that was a good idea? Well, I did at the time, but maybe not now. Today, all that's left of the Wool Township headquarters is the Marconi Hotel. This was the Klan headquarters. And he, Bell himself, had a bungalow that overlooked the Shark River until he got kicked out. Yeah, this is New Jersey Attorney General David Van Riper. In 1946, they're talking about revitalizing the Klan, which was they actually had disbanded themselves during the war. And in 1946, some guy in Atlanta said, well, I'm the new Grand Dragon, and I think we're going to go back, and we get contacts, and he mentioned some states in New Jersey. So the governor of New Jersey tells Van Riper, the Attorney General, get rid of these guys. And Van Riper says, well, they have a contract for incorporation signed in 1923. So, well, is there a way to do this? And Van Riper says, oh yeah, I'll find it. And he goes, they have a show cause and certificate of ouster at the New Jersey Supreme Court. At the same time, the Georgia governor was looking to get rid of the Klan down there, and this is a picture of Van Riper discussing it with an attorney general from Georgia. Now, this again is the Klan's undoing. New Jersey was home to a large number of immigrants, as I mentioned before. 20% of the population were born in another country, and I matched that against World War I casualties from a given county in New Jersey, and it came up that 21% of those casualties were born in a foreign country. So it sort of verifies it, and the census does too. And they never could get a real start here. And I don't know what they were up to. I know they did a lot of theatrics, and you saw people in the 60s and during the Civil Rights era come up and claim they're the Klan again, but it's not the Klan of I call it the second iteration of the Klan. The first being the one right after the Civil War, and now it's just a bunch of ne'er-do-wells. But in the 1920s, they had a good deal of power in the South and of course in Indiana, which is Indiana's skirted. It's a Midwestern state, but sort of a Southern state as well. So that's my Klan story.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot for that, Joe. And I appreciate you being our first guest here with the New Jersey Room live on YouTube with the predictable technical difficulties. I was actually running the slideshow on my end, and I think I mostly kept up with you, but we do the best we can. We're all learning this. So I just wondered if you'd, as we wait to see if we get any questions on the YouTube channel, just if you talk a little bit about the contrast between the post-Civil War Klan and how Birth of a Nation really sort of reinvented that. Because I think you mentioned in your books that the hoods, which we so closely associate with the Klan, were really a product of that
Yes.
of that movie,
Yes.
which I thought.
Well, they used the Klansmen in the 1860s, late 60s. It was 72 when Grant had them taken care of. They would wear masks and sometimes some kind of a pillowcase over their head. I never saw any photographs of them with robes. But for the theatrical part, in the movie, they invented these uniforms with the hoods and the whole deal, and and then gave them this heroic image.
Yeah, and I noticed that the district attorney in Georgia had the last name Duke, and I was just wondering if there's any relation to other Dukes who may or may not be associated with the.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
But that's all I'll say.
Okay. And again, there was a lot of Jersey City players in this. We saw Edward Edwards,
Yes.
Jersey City
Yes.
guy, who of course came to a tragic end. I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that nexus of Catholic politics from Jersey City and the Klan, and just how those dynamics played out, just to tie it in locally a little bit.
Well, you had the horseshoe, which is where Frank Hague came from. And Jersey City politics in the 19th century, they had pushed the Irish into one spot. And so they couldn't control the whole government when there was an election. It was gerrymandered. And actually, and aside from this, in the 1870s, the treasurer of Jersey City was a Civil War veteran, ran off with the treasury and a dancing girl from New York to Mexico. So there was always a little scandal there. And
the other Alexander Hamilton, yes.
Yes, right. Alexander Hamilton was his name. Yeah. With the rise of Hague and the Irish in Jersey City, it doesn't become a welcome place for the Klan. Edwards, Hague had the power to make guys governor, but not to run the legislature. So Edwards was one of his guys. Interestingly, most of the guys that he selected were not Catholic; they were Protestants. Edwards said he was going to keep New Jersey as wet as the Atlantic Ocean, running in the year the Prohibition Amendment was initially started. And he did indeed come to a tragic end. I think he lost a lot of his money in the stock market crash, and then developed cancer and shot himself. But the other governors, Harry Moore, I always call him the once and future governor, because he always is. He's governor 3 times. Under the Constitution of 1846, you can't succeed yourself. It's not until the 47 Constitution changes that. So he's in 3 years, out 3 years, in 3 years, out 3 years, for three times. So it's kind of an interesting, and he holds the rallies down. He and Hague hold the rallies down at Seagard, while the Klan is in that area.
Okay, we do have a question that came in, a pair of questions that came in on the YouTube, and I apologize to our YouTube attendees. There is a bit of a gap between when you type them and when I see them. So Eric asked, many of the slides show Klansmen as respectable men, but can you speak more on the atrocities that the KKK committed against minorities, especially Black Americans?
Okay.
And also she asked if you could speak on why so-called respectable men might be attracted to such a violent group.
Well, in New Jersey, they weren't violent. There was more violence perpetrated against the Klan and for the Klan. Now, that's not the case in the South and even in Indiana. But in New Jersey, they tiptoed a little bit. I can't think of a single violent incident perpetrated by Klansmen. I mean, there are legends. When I was doing this book, some guy who I knew slightly contacted me and said, well, they lynched a whole bunch of black people up in Oxford Furnace. And I said, what's your source for that? Well, I know a woman who told me that her grandfather had told her that. I said, I'm sorry, it didn't make the newspapers. And the newspapers were almost universally against the Klan. So it never got going here, but it was, of course, violent in other areas down south. And that was one thing I think that turned people off up here as well. So, but here they primarily launched themselves. They took it for granted that white supremacy was the way to go. They mentioned that. But on the other hand, they also, their main drive was against Catholic Jews and immigrants. And there weren't that many black people in New Jersey then.
Yeah, absolutely. The Great Migration, which would increase that, is subsequent to that time. Now, Michelle asks, says she was struck how Atlantic City tolerated alcohol during Prohibition, but not the KKK. So the role of alcohol in the relative popularity of the KKK, if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, the KKK was prohibitionist, at least in name. Steve Stevenson out there in Indiana, he was knocking down the booze as fast as he could. But theoretically and in public, they were prohibitionists. And so the Klan down there, you had a large black population, even some law enforcement officers. You had Nucky, and Nucky catered to the black vote. You needed that black vote. And you had a resort area, and you had process of prostitution and all kinds of stuff going on there that the Klan was supposedly against. So they could not generate people in the town to feel the same as them. And nobody complained when Bader put through that resolution, if you wear a mask in town, you're going to get arrested. And so, they were just the opposite. The people who liked the booze didn't like the Klan.
Okay, and Indefatigable Fredman, great name, by the way, is wondering how the Klan in New Jersey compared to Pennsylvania or New York. Did those states see a second iteration as well, or are there other
yes, they did.
northeastern states?
Yeah, there were clans in the second iteration, as I call it. There were clans in every state, and two British Columbia and another Canadian province. And again, you're coming out of an era when you had all these fraternal organizations, and it was part of entertainment for guys, and it was part of, they would say, well, we're white supremacists. Well, everybody was back then, they were just a little more emphatic than others. There was a Klan presence in New York, and there's a Klan presence in Pennsylvania, but they were a little stronger in Western Pennsylvania than they are here, because, towards the Midwest. But the nothing significant. And the New York, especially in New York City, the authorities were very anti-Klan.
Okay, and we do have another question here that I'm going to read because it's on the thing, but Michelle is struck by the KKK presence in New Jersey is in historically Republican legacy counties. And she wants to know if you have any thoughts on that without revealing our respective and possibly different party affiliations.
Okay. Well, and generally speaking, if I had to categorize, and of course I'm not, that doesn't mean it's universally correct, right? The Klan was popular among Democrats in the South and Republicans in the North. Because you had, and the Republican counties, rural counties are the same. So you have rural people and you have Republicans and you have Protestants. And they're looking with alarm at this deluge of immigrants who can't speak English. I mean, we've had this periodically against the Irish and even the Germans, Hoboken. But when you have people that don't speak English, don't look exactly like you, there was a large anti-immigrant feeling. And that was the manifestation here, and it was in the rural areas in New Jersey. It wasn't going to be in Newark. It wasn't going to be in Jersey City or Hoboken, or Perth Amboy, for that matter. We saw the riot down there. Is that an answer?
Yeah. And we've saved the possibly most important question for last. Naughty Hippo 1 wants to know the best way that folks can buy your book.
Yes. Most New Jersey bookstores have it, and it's on Amazon as well. And Amazon, they offer you can do an ebook, you can do the softcover, or you can do a hardcover.
Okay, and we do have we do have one more question here that's come in. I said that was the last one, but this is a good question. Isaac wants to know, how come the KKK is not described as a domestic terrorist group? And why is KKK history in New Jersey not spoken about more?
The second part is very interesting. They wanted to, after 1940, the 40s, they wanted to pretend it never happened. If you look at the 1940 yearbook, WPA, it mentions the Klan once in the entire book, and it's talking about the Klan in another state. They wanted to pretend it never happened. And that's part of the, no historian ever tackled it. As a matter of fact, there was a series of books done in New Jersey history back in the 60s, and I think they were published by Van Nostrand or Princeton, and it's all different aspects of New Jersey history. And
the Tercentenary series, right? The Tercentenary series.
Yeah, I have a lot of them. And the one on religion I have, when you go into and you look up our friend Alma White, it just says she supported her religious colony by her writings. Doesn't say what they were, doesn't say. So, they just want to forget about it and pretend it never happened. As far as it not being called a domestic terrorist organization, you have to ask the federal government. And the Klan today is not what it was then. It's not a national organization that's tightly together as it was in the 20s into the 30s, where if you wanted to be a Klansman, you had to buy your Klan regalia from a place in Atlanta, and it would be delivered to you by the Kliegel who recruited you, and he would take it. Sure.
All right. Well, I think that's it's been a great presentation, very informative, and I appreciate you bearing with me as I'm learning the technology here, being our guinea pig here, so to speak. And for all the work that you do in New Jersey history, all those awards are well deserved. So thanks. And again, this book is available in all bookstores once they're open, and in your online retailers, I think directly from the History Press too, you can get it.
Yes.
Thanks again, Joe. We really appreciate you being here. Okay. Okay.
We're out.
And yeah, well.
Is that okay? Or?
Hold on a second.